Well, would you looky here? It's time once again for the AEW Dynamite review. I'm Mr. Warren Hayes, and thank you for being here. Hope everyone is having a wonderful week. It is currently April 13th. I had to check. I don't know why, because it's written. It's like right in my notes, right in front of my face, and I still went. Oh, and I checked my calendar. I didn't check the notes. Basically, is what I'm saying, and I wrote it down. And I know we're going to be reviewing the April 12th Dynamite, and we're doing this the day after, but yet I still had to check. My brain spasmed. Look, it's the longest storyline in pro wrestling right now. The onset of my stroke. The signs are all there. We're just, hang around, subscribe today if you don't want to miss that, and leave a like on the video. That way, when we finish that story, when we finish the story of my stroke, you will be here, and you will not have missed a single solitary second of it. So yeah, do that. Like and subscribe. That's if you're watching this on youtube.com /MrWarrenHayes, of course, right now. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, 5-star ratings on Spotify. Any kind of love that you can show anywhere is a big deal, goes a long way, helps to grow the podcast, gets me into more, ear holes and eyeballs. And personally, I think that's a good thing. As far as, look, I keep saying it, but as far as D-list podcasts go, I'm the best one. And I think, we need to share that and continue growing the A+ audience that comes to enjoy, or at least put up with what I do. Not enjoying, just, at the very least, endure, which I appreciate a great deal. There's not much meta to talk about this week. We might as well just jump right into last night's Dynamite. As we mentioned, just for the record, to be super clear, April 12th, 2023 from Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the UWM Panther Arena. I'm mitigated on this show. I don't know exactly how to position myself with aplomb. That's it. It's like I don't know exactly what I should do, or at least because I know what to do. I'm going to review the show, but I don't know exactly how to feel about it. I feel like last night's show is the textbook definition of a mixed bag, right? I think that's wouldn't you concur? Don't you agree, doctor? Don't you concur? Because eventful things happen, newsworthy things happen, surprises occurred, and you're like, this. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened that is just very middling. I think mixed bag is the best way to go about it, let's go piece by piece, part by part, like we usually do, and we'll discuss it as we go along. And maybe as I go along, I might change my mind. Maybe at the end of the review, as I'm saying things out loud, maybe I'll be like, you know what, this stunk, or hey, you know what, this ruled. But probably not. But the show started off with Darby Allin defeating Swerve Strickland. I thought they had a fun match. That was fun. It was a good match, well worked. I feel like it started off a little slow, and I say this not like I don't mind typically when matches start off, at a slower tempo, because I feel like then it's like, okay, well, we're building to something, we got to get through. We don't want to burn off all the spots from the get-go, and that's fine. And I appreciate a good structure for a match. Don't get me wrong. But in this case here, I'm wondering, I was like, even for me, I thought that it didn't quite kick off as powerfully as it could. And a lot of feeling out and a lot of stuff, or maybe it doesn't, are we missing a beat here? Are you guys not exactly on the same page? Which is kind of weird because Darby and Swerve do have good chemistry together. But it picked up. It picked up, and I thought the latter half of the match was pretty good, which of course consisted of Darby taking crazy bumps, like he's dangling from the side of the apron at some point, and Swerve jumps over the top rope to double stomp him to the floor, and that was a great spot. We even got a poison Rana off the apron, which was insane. And then basically the embassy gets involved here. The members of the Mogul embassy, they get involved here to distract the referee, allows Strickland to get some get some shots in. But look, referee tosses them, and Darby tries to put Swerve away with the coffin drop. He can't. Tries to put him away with the code red. He can't. But he puts him away with the Last Supper, which, as Tony Schiavone pointed out, if I believe, anyway, commentary pointed out, that the Last Supper is Swerve's kryptonite against Darby. Like, there's no two ways to go about it. That's how he's been defeating Swerve on AEW. So good. And like I said, I really liked the second half of the match. I thought it was pretty good, but I think these guys have a better one in them. And it will be unquestionably down the road. They will have bigger matches with higher stakes. But you can't go wrong here. This was fine. This was good. Look, it was good. It's more than fine. It was good. I enjoyed the match. Don't get me wrong here. I'm just like, maybe my expectations were somewhere else. But just before we move on to, talking about what happened after the match, I cannot emphasize enough how much of a good idea it was to, get rid of the trailer park goons of Mogul affiliates, and have Swerve pair up with Prince Nana and Brian Cage at this point. We can assume that the Gates of Agony are involved in this at some level, but you know what I mean? Like, this is fantastic. Because, look, I am a big Swerve Strickland proponent. I think he has that it factor. I think he has all the qualities that define stardom in pro wrestling. He's got charisma. He's got swagger, presence. He commands the arena when he comes in. Good wrestler. Like, he has tools to be the superstar. I sometimes feel like they try too hard with Swerve in AEW, trying too hard to get him over. When I think he's just a natural talent. He's got some very natural affinities. I still think his ceiling is world champion. I really do. So, this need for him to be in a group, to be a leader of a group, I understand why you do it, because I think he's the type of character, the type of persona that lends well to being the centerpiece, the crown jewel, if you may, of a group. Absolutely. And he will get even more shine out of it. I thought they were trying too hard with Parker Boudreaux and Trench. Back to the minor league. Back to minor league baseball for you, Trench. Or the tattoo shop. Whichever comes first. Whoever calls you first. Look, Swerve is a star. He's a superstar. And I think I think this works. I think this works for him. And as a passing thought here, again, just before we dive in, there's still, I've talked about this a couple of times. There's still a lot of crossover in terms of there's still a lot of crossover in terms of Ring of Honor talent being on AEW television. And for me, it helps me feel comfortable with the fact that I'm not watching Ring of Honor television, that I'm not watching. And I was going to say not subscribed. I am subscribed to Honor Club. It's my problem that I'm not watching it. All I'm saying here. But I feel like it's my problem then. I feel like I don't feel compelled to watch Ring of Honor on a weekly basis because I feel with all the crossover that still exists with Ring of Honor talent being on AEW television, I feel like I'm not necessarily missing anything. I think Ring of Honor needs to have a proper brand split. I think there has to be a line drawn in the middle where it's like, all right, you guys and gals are all over here, and we're not going to see on the other place. And I think that would help. It would help me anyway. If I'm guaranteed, if I feel like I will not be able to see these guys and gals on a regular basis, unless I watch Honor Club, well, the pay-per-views are not miss. Since Tony Khan took over Ring of Honor, there hasn't been a single Ring of Honor pay-per-view that did not deliver. They've all been misses. They've all been hits. No misses. Not a single one of them. But on a weekly basis, it's like, the embassy is there with, their Ring of Honor titles. I'm like, okay, cool. At the same time, I also understand that, Tony has to use his television to get people to subscribe to the subscription service, right? So that's also something I understand. There's a lot of things I understand, from an analytical point of view, from a business standpoint. I know why he's doing this stuff. It doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean that I understand something. It means I immediately have to like it. I can understand something and still dislike it. So anyway, but it's not something that overcomes me. Like I don't see Brian Cage showing up on my TV. I don't see him showing up on my TV, and then I cross my arms and I start pouting like, Jesus Christ, when are they going to get rid of all these? When are they going to get rid of all these Ring of Honor guys on my TV? Like, that's not it. It doesn't sour my experience of watching AEW, but it does impact me watching Ring of Honor on a weekly basis. Does that make sense? Because right now, other people have said this. I'm just parroting here. This is not an original thought, but Ring of Honor does indeed feel like AEW Red and Black, or black and red. I think black is the dominant color. Black and red. And I think that's a fair assessment. We're a bit off track here. Let's get back to the review. After the match, we have Darby Allin, who cuts his Pillars promo now. We had Jungle Boy doing his. We had Sammy doing his. Now it was Darby's turn to say, to talking to the mic. But MJF comes out. And MJF starts, he sets the table. He says, first of all, he gives Darby credit. Good match. It's impressive that he won since his daddy Sting wasn't out here. He says that they had one of the greatest matches, they being MJF and Darby Allin, pronouns pal. He said that they had one of the greatest matches in the history of pro wrestling at Full Gear 2021. MJF says that even though Darby is a little emo schmuck, pound for pound, he's one of the best people he's ever been in the ring against. Again, heel promo 101 happening here. Effective, smart, MJF here, once again, despite the fact that he feels that he's superior to everyone, that he is the heel here and that you're supposed to hate him, he's making sure that his competition comes across as competition. We've talked about this before. If all the heels, if the only thing the heel says in his promos is that you're a terrible wrestler, you stink, you shouldn't be here, you don't belong here, you're bad at what you do, it reflects poorly on the heel, because then the heel is only challenging schmucks, as to paraphrase MJF. Well, I'm not paraphrasing. That's a direct quote, actually. So he being MJF has done this with each of his competition at this point, putting them over for their skills, their talent, their drive, saying, I'll give you credit for this, but you're not as good as me. But I'll give you credit for everything that we've done together, or that I've watched you do, so on and so forth. So again, this is just perfect heel work, heel promo from MJF. Don't bury the competition. Otherwise, you're going to look like it's not going to make you look any better. So once MJF defeats whoever he's going to defeat in the throes of this, Pillars feud, he's going to look like $1 million, or at least he's going to look good, depending on who he beats, right? He reminds Darby that he beat him. Despite the fact that he's putting him over and making sure that he also takes the time to remind him, I beat you with the headlock takeover. Don't forget that, brother. And he says Darby is not on the level of the devil. So there you go. So he puts him over, but then it's like, look, you're still a dope. You're still a dope. Darby Allin then says, back when they worked the indies together, MJF said when he made it to national television, everything would change. But MJF is still the same. And Darby says he felt the same way, but when he got to AEW, he actually started therapy because he didn't want to be happy on the outside while he's dying on the inside. And he's learned that it doesn't matter about his level of success doesn't matter. What matters is taking care of the people he loves, buying houses for his parents and retiring, helping his dad retire and all of that. And he said, Sting is not my dad. He's just his best friend in this entire company. And he says he's not like Max, he being Darby, of course. He won't lower his morals to be somebody in this world. Again, this is a running theme with all of the pillars at this point, where MJF is, amoral, an asshole, ready to do whatever it takes, right? MJF tells Darby he's not special and he's sick of hearing him whine about morals because morals kill careers in this business. He's not wrong. He says he's not an idiot. He's keenly aware that he might end up on his deathbed alone and that he might not go to heaven, but he doesn't give a shit because the title comes first. That's all that matters. And he says his legacy in this sport will be the legacy of being the greatest of all time. And Darby's legacy will be that he is Sting's bitch. Fun. Oh, that brings out Sting, who gets into the ring. He's got pom-poms. Sting came to the ring with props. So he's got his excellent bomber jacket is full of pom-poms. He says because he's a cheerleader. He's not in daddy daycare. He's got a fever, and the only cure is more pom-poms. So he's just pulling them out and brushing them in Max's face. He says he'll stop if MJF stops talking about this Cody daycare stuff, and then he went, oopsies, he let that one slip. Basically referencing the fact that Max once had a support system. He had his own daddy daycare, which was Cody, but now Cody's gone and now Max is alone. And Sting's basically saying here, look, I've had a support system. I had, when I was Surfer Sting, I had Ric Flair. When I was Crow, I had Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. And he says, I even have some Joker Sting left in me, So he's like, he's always had people supporting him. So he's basically making a point that it doesn't make Darby worse off to have someone in his corner. He says he also adds he adds that he doesn't have a thirst for the world title, and he'll be real with everyone. Showtime for him is almost over, but it's just starting for Darby Allin. Good promo. Darby says he's coming for the title, of course. MJF spits in his face and hits the showers. So good. I thought this was a fun little promo, and I thought a very solid delivery from Darby, whose promo work has been very good. He's one of these guys who, if he gets to talk authentically, from the heart to a degree, he comes off very sincerely and very good and very compelling. So it works. I would shudder to think of Darby Allin reading off, these WWE scripts, how cringe they would be. Imagine that. That would be, and it would be no good for him. He'd end up failing at it. Anyway, and some good stuff by Sting. See, again, clever to bring Sting out, to add a little more emphasis here. He didn't just come out for the sake of coming out. He came out to justify this idea of having a support system isn't a sign of weakness. So that's building your baby face. It makes sense. Also, the Sting rub also always helps. Plus, you're not entirely dependent on Darby, who is, although his promo is very good and has been improving, he's not a master storyteller yet. So Sting able to command a room. He's the legend. He's, he is who he is. He's able to take some of the slack off of Darby here to command the room. MJF, I saw some comments where I was like, you know what? MJF has been, he's been a little mid. He hasn't been as hot as he usually is. And that's not the point of these promos here. The point of these promos where he's been in the ring with the pillars is to get the other pillars over. So his job is not to smoke out the other guys. It's not to expose them. So maybe he is pulling back just a little bit, not going in full force. He's just pulling back a little bit. And I think, hey, it's working because Darby looked good here. I think, the promos with Jack Perry were very good as well. He's been doing his role fantastically. Honestly, the weakest one of the bunch so far, as far as these promos go, was Sammy's. I thought this was a good little segment. Continues to set this up. We still have a few weeks before Double or Nothing. So we still have a few weeks leading into Double or Nothing to not make the main event a fatal four-way. Don't say fatal four-way. No, but we have time. Right? Please. Have a tournament. Anything. Single elimination. I don't care. Just knock some of the guys off the card. It's fine. I was laughing, because we could do like in Starcade Dual Shock, not Dual Shock, Future Shock. Where they had they had a tournament on the pay-per-view, right? You don't have to do that either. That's not the point. I just want to build one contender, build a contender. Is it because we don't want the two of the four pillars to look weak here? Who cares? It's not important. And, the pillars are who they are. And, this brand that they have will follow them forever at this point. They'll always be a support. They'll always be a support pillar of AEW, regardless. It doesn't matter if Sammy loses or if Perry loses or Darby loses in qualifiers or whatever. It doesn't make them any worse off. Just give us some fantastic matches. Anyway. Powerhouse Hobbs squashed two-time Ring of Honor television champion Silas Young. But look, the match is what it is, but that was not the story here. Before the match, Powerhouse Hobbs arrived with his tricked out Powerhouse car and hands the keys over to the security guard or whatever and says, nothing had better happen to this car. Oh, gee willikers. I wonder if something's going to happen to the car now. And after the match, Wardlow makes a big return after a return after being off of TV for a few weeks. And he's he starts destroying the car with a pipe. And the car no-sells the pipe. At least where he was whacking it. Then he gets into a nearby lift, conveniently placed, and he tips it over. Is this BattleBots? And then he runs into the arena to pummel Hobbs, and they have a pull-apart brawl. If I never see a car wrecking angle in pro wrestling ever again, it will be too soon. They do nothing for me. This is like, I don't care. I don't care about, is the story, are car wrecking angles in pro wrestling significant because pro wrestlers don't take out insurance on their cars? Is this like a well-kept secret? And now Hobbs is out of a motor vehicle because he didn't insure it? Like, who cares? Oh, but Warren, the car being tipped was cool. Sure, I guess. Fine. I don't know. I couldn't, like, this does nothing for me. And it, like, these angles are always the same thing. It's consistently the same thing. At least, look, I'm going to give Wardlow credit. He was channeling his inner Bill Goldberg here. At least he didn't decide to punch through a car window. Shout out to him for not being a complete meathead. But I could not have cared less about this. It's whatever. Stop doing car wrecking angles unless they're exploding. I don't care. Saw a couple of signs as well in the audience for regarding QTV. Certain members of the live audience in Milwaukee expressing their distaste of QTV, which of course you all know I echo. But we didn't get the segment. We got the QTV crew out at ringside. Okay. But yeah. We see Switchblade, Jay White, and Juice Robinson. They have a pre-tape putting over how the greatest wrestlers in the world have all come from Bullet Club, and now Bullet Club is in AEW. And AEW is going to get a taste of that. And they call themselves Bullet Club Gold. Or what did Jay White call it? The Bang Bang Gang? I am going to get behind that. Anyway, my mind is entirely open to Jay White and AEW and seeing what he's going to do moving forward. I think a change of scenery is good for all pro wrestlers at some point in their career. I think that, and I'm excited to see how Jay White is going to compose on a weekly North American, nationally televised wrestling show, which has its own challenges, as opposed to the much more looser production of a New Japan show. I'm excited. I'm very, very excited to see how this is going to go. Plus, look, let's double emphasize this. Bullet Club Gold, I really believe El Fantasma is on his way. Of course, they had released Bullet Club Gold designs about a week ago for merch, and there was some ELP designs in there as well. ELP was thrown out of Bullet Club at Sakura Genesis this weekend. ELP is going to get over in North America. This is going to be a guy that people are going to, people who aren't familiar with New Japan, who don't know exactly who this guy is, he's going to pop on TV and they're going to be like, Jesus, this guy's great. Charisma, personality, good, fantastic in-ring work. He's going to get over. He's going to shine in all of this. Then we get the AEW International title match. Orange Cassidy defeated Buddy Matthews to retain his championship. This was unquestionably match of the night. It's not even close. And the story here, Look, I thought this was very good. That it was a strong match. Orange Cassidy continue being the workhorse. Just keep proving me right, AEW. It's fine. I'm training for all these upcoming victory laps. I thought the final sequence, like the final third of this match, was just phenomenal stuff. Like, it really elevated the match, got the crowd into it. When the minute it really kicks off when Cassidy lands a diving DDT to the floor, then another one in the ring, and then we have all these issues with the Orange Punch, right? Because this is the story they've been telling for a few weeks. Because of the belt shot, because Orange Cassidy is working every week on every show, defending his title all the time, the Orange Punch hand is getting a little soft. He's been working too hard. He's maybe been working with a little injury, kayfabe, of course. So this is starting to factor into his last few matches. He can't put the guys away as quickly. He's got to work for it a little more. So who is going to capitalize on this? Because this is the story. This is the tale right now. Orange Cassidy is vulnerable. Who is going to come in to take advantage of that? Buddy Matthews did his best here. Worked the hand, stomped on it, was good stuff. I love that final sequence where Cassidy is baiting Matthews and Matthews realizes he's getting baited, so he's not jumping. Anyway, Mousetrap gets the win on this one. So look, Cassidy consistent as ever, entertaining, great work rate. Again, the international title is the working man's belt at this point. This is what Cassidy is doing to it right now. It's the working man's belt in the company. I'm all for it. This is great. A lot of people have been saying, this has been Buddy Matthews' best match in AEW so far. I mean, well, when everything he's done so far is unremarkable, sure, this is his best match, but I would say that we haven't seen a great Buddy Matthews match in AEW yet. He hasn't uncorked anything at this point. He's solid. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's a slouch, but we haven't seen that great Buddy Matthews match yet. And this was very good. He was very strong here. Did it blow me away? No, he was great, but nothing that just where I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Anything that makes it special, that is a Buddy Matthews signature match. We haven't seen it yet in AEW. Anyway, but nonetheless, I thought this match was very, very good. I enjoyed it a tremendous deal. Then we get Christian Cage and Luchasaurus hanging out in the red light district. Literally. And Christian Cage tells us some things have changed. Okay. Because, Luchasaurus's mask hopefully has changed because he's getting sued over it. But Christian Cage is still running around with a black turtleneck, and that's fine. I don't know what's changed yet. Outside of the mask. I hope the mask has changed. The imagery is very dark. You can't get a good look at it. I don't know how much you change the Luchasaurus mask either. Like how bad can you go into a redesign without completely alienating people? It's like, oh, I'm already thinking about it too much. Backstage to follow up on Orange Cassidy's match, Renee Paquette is interviewing best friends. Orange Cassidy is there. He's having his hand looked after. Trent says that Orange Cassidy's success is making him jealous. So Chucky T challenges none other than the new IWGP World Tag Team Champions, the Aussie Open, challenges them to fly in from Japan and set up a fight on Rampage this Friday. So we know Rampage is not live this week. It was on Wednesday, right? It was taped last night. Or is it? Hang on. Let me just make sure. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Rampage has been taped. So, Aussie Open wins the IWGP Tag Team titles on Saturday, and then they jump in, one of the longest flights available to man, from Tokyo to the fucking Midwest, the American Midwest, to fight on a Rampage with the IWGP Tag titles. And I'm looking forward to this match. Aussie Open rule. It should be a lot of fun with the best friends. And Tony Khan not being a complete dope here, The Forbidden Door show's coming up. Keep dropping some of these little IWGP tidbits. It doesn't have to be, an extremely solid build. We don't need to have tons of storylines. But it's just like, remind people, oh yeah. Oh, these are the champions. Okay. Introduce them to your audience in this manner. So then when we do get to Forbidden Door, you'll be like, yeah, okay, the Aussie guys. And they've been on Ring of Honor too. What was it? It was in January, I think. I don't remember if it was Kyle Fletcher or Mark Davis they were tweeting out, we got no bookings in January, right? We got nothing to do. And everyone was sort of doing this and going, why? This doesn't make sense. And here we go. Like they've been wrestling nonstop. They've been on Ring of Honor. They've been on Dynamite. Of course, they've been in New Japan as well. Win the titles. Come back to North America. Good for them. I don't think they're going to be worried about the booking situation moving forward. Not for a while, anyway. Ethan Page is in the ring, calls out Matt Hardy to understand why he attacked him during his match with Hook last week. He reminds everyone, says, don't forget, Matt, you have a contract. You work for me. Matt Hardy and Isaiah Cassidy come out. Matt says, you got to read the fine print on the contract or you'll get carnied. He didn't say that specifically, but that's what it meant. And in the contract, it was said that if ever Hook defeats Ethan Page, Matt Hardy gets released from the contract. Okay. I'm like, all right, this seems highly unnecessary, but okay. Lee Moriarty and Big Bill run in to beat down on the babyfaces. Hook joins in the fray, but he gets overwhelmed as well. But then Jeff Hardy runs in with a painted chair, chases off the heels, lands a swanton. He is back, hugs with Matt. He's back. And he comes out to a tremendous reaction. A huge reaction. The biggest. Jeff Hardy will never not be over. Ridiculous. This guy has a special connection with wrestling fans. Something that is just, it's unique. He has a connection with the fans like one person would have told us in the past that cannot be taught. That's just something you got. Crowd are on their feet. It was the biggest reaction of the night. He didn't pause on the ramp to do the pose, he just ran in to beat up the dudes. This, of course, was followed by a bevy of well wishes and terrible takes, to the amounts of both out there in wrestling land. I'm going to tell you, all I wish for Jeff Hardy is that he's healthy and that he's happy. Ultimately, that's what matters. I've spoken many times on previous occasions of, the Mr. MrWarrenHayes show, and even when I was still doing, when I was still at Fightful, the addict's brain, and I know this is difficult to relate to, because you shouldn't have to relate to an addict's brain, because an addict's brain is wired differently than someone who is sober, who has always been sober. It's not the same. So things that sound like common sense for someone like myself, doesn't necessarily ring true for someone whose brain is actively working against you, is actively finding ways to mess you up. That's probably without getting into a full-on dissertation, I think it's the best way I can explain it. So, everyone's saying, oh, I hope Jeff doesn't mess it up this time. I don't know if pro wrestling is the best place for him. I understand that all of these things come from are out of good intentions, right? These are well wishes that you would extend to anyone that you hope that for the best, because you, as someone who hasn't gone through it, cannot relate. And that's fine, and you shouldn't have to. And cheers to you if you're, if you're in a good spot in that way. But ultimately, we can only hope that Jeff is making all these decisions himself. Well, let me rephrase that. We can only hope that all these decisions that Jeff is making himself are good for him and are supported by people who love him and people who are making sure that the decisions that he's making will support a healthy lifestyle. Because ultimately, the decision to be sober or not lies entirely on Jeff. That's entirely for him. But in the past, I myself have pondered as to whether or not the pro wrestling business was good for Jeff, if it enabled him, if it was a bad environment for him. But over the past couple of years, I have seen a trend of multiple wrestlers going into rehabilitation and coming out stronger, looking for ways to kick their habits, becoming sober. And there's more and more sober wrestlers as well. We're a far cry from the pill-popping norm that was prevalent throughout the 80s and 90s in pro wrestling, like really deeply entrenched in the culture of pro wrestling, not just people doing it here and there, not like a part of what you do. So there's more and more wrestlers out there who aren't about who are taking care of themselves, making sure that they don't fall into the throes of addiction or alcoholism or whatnot. So I can't even say with confidence, that the wrestling business is a bad place for Jeff. It's Jeff who will have to decide whether whatever he embarks upon, whether it's good for him or not. So if he feels like this is good for him, we can support that. But the real reality is that Jeff might fall off the wagon again. And I know as observers and people looking in, we'll be like, well, we gave him so many chances. But it's not about you, and it's not about us. It's about him. And it's about his sobriety. And it's about his struggle to overcome it. And the statistics are out there. Relapse is ridiculously common amongst alcoholics, drug addicts. The percentage of people who truly recover is minimal as opposed to the people who relapse. So the deck has always been stacked against Jeff Hardy. And we've seen him in terrible positions live on television. We've seen the terrible reports that come out of it. There's things that are very difficult to excuse and can be inexcusable for some people as well. But keep that in mind, that this is not about Jeff Hardy. This is about Jeff Hardy. It's not about us as wrestling fans, about giving chances, about, I don't know if I can support this anymore. It's okay. Because it's Jeff's battle, it's Jeff's struggle. And hopefully, we can only help that he's happy and healthy and that he will have a prolonged time of sobriety and wellness and of balance in his life. And that's all we can really wish for him at this point. And it's the most human thing we can do. And I can understand that as an observer, as a fan, you can feel bad for Jeff. It can make you angry, it can make you sad, and I can understand that because we're fans. We don't want our favorites to go down terrible routes. We don't want terrible things to happen to them in the ring. It's the same thing with an injury, whatnot. And I understand that a lot of these sentiments come from a good place, kind-hearted. I understand all of that. But ultimately, I wish health and happiness for Jeff. I hope that's what he has right now. And I hope it continues. Because it's all up to Jeff at this point. We get a pre-tape of Kenny Omega saying the Bucks are still in hospital and the BCC attacking Don Callis across the line. Jesus Christ, that gash, right? We haven't talked about it, but you could practically see his skull. Like, that was a bad spill that Don took. Holy shit. Anyway, Kenny here was serious. He was violent. He wasn't a different, when pro wrestling commentators say, oh, we're seeing a different side of Kenny Omega here. This leads us into the Blackpool Combat Club defeating the C team of the Elite, Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa. Look, the C team put up as good a fight as they could. Lots of hope spots to get the crowd into it, but they get overwhelmed. Of course they should. It's fine. Chalk it up to Cesaro being maybe a little arrogant. At some point, Nakazawa back body drops him and Cesaro he hits the mat in frustration. Is like, this guy should not be getting this up on me, so that's fine. Just a little cocky. They get beaten up and bloodied. Both Cutler and Nakazawa blade. Knox throws the fight because it's just brutal. No one's trying to get a win here. These guys are just getting reamed. Then Kenny Omega shows up. Big surprise. And then the Bucks sneak up from the crowd and attack the Blackpool Combat Club with a super kick party. And everyone's losing their mind and like, shit, the Elite is here. Omega gets a toolkit and he wants to launch it at Mox, but man interrupts. And instead they pull out a screwdriver. Claudio gets Mox out of the ring before they do the screwdriver spots. They try a little symbol that they were ready to get some revenge for a pound of flesh for Adam Page, who got screw-driven last week. That is the verb, isn't it? It should. You don't get screw-drived. You get screw-driven. Fun little segment continues on. This feud is gold. This feud is perfect. I don't know what to tell you. This build has been great. Good little surprise here. We're getting closer to some stuff. We're going to need some resolution here. But a good surprise. Good surprise show up here by the Elite. Got the crowd into it. I liked it. The Mogul Embassy is backstage and they Swerve takes credit for Darby's greatness and he says he still has some scores to settle that we'll settle later tonight. We can see this one coming a mile away. The Outcasts team of Ruby Soho and Toni Storm defeat Riho and Skye Blue. This was all right. Nothing to write home about, but Toni gets the win with a German suplex, a hip attack, and Storm 0. After the match, the Outcasts, all three of them, they shield bomb Riho, spray paint the L on her. Jamie Hayter runs in. She gets overwhelmed. Britt runs in, beats up on Saraya and almost stomps her. So now we're at a point where it's like, okay, what's next? What is, because this is all it's been at this point. This is all it's been at this point. It's the Outcasts doing shit, and then the baby faces run in to chase them off. What is the next step? Let's move on. Let's get something else going here. It's weird because this Outcast thing, it's like it's trying to change gears, if this makes sense. So it's like a steam engine. Let's see where this one goes. It's like a steam engine where, you know, the guy is shoveling coal. He probably had a name. It's not the conductor, right? It's the coal shoveler. And he's shoveling coal, and the train starts going a little faster, but then at some point, he has to stop, and he pats the sweat off his brow. He takes a few sips of lemonade. He looks at the beautiful countryside. So the train starts to slow down, and you don't quite know, but you're a passenger, you don't know why. You're like, why is the train not going full force here? Why is the train not going as strong? Is this a good analogy? I feel it's very basic. I'm not inventing anything. Like, it's not great. It's fine, I guess. I don't know. But I feel like look, let's talk modern cars. I think like it's it's like when I tried to learn how how to drive a car with manual transmission. It's like, I'm trying to change gears, Dad. I'm trying. I don't understand. So I'm still in first. Yes, I'm still in first gear. I'm trying to. Dad. Is that better? Anyway, look, my point being is that something has to happen here because this has been really redundant. And then we get the main event of Chris Jericho where he defeats Keith Lee. This was, again, all right, but nothing memorable and a little underwhelming as far as AEW Dynamite main events go. I think this would have worked better if Chris Jericho had been thrown around a little more, but maybe Chris Jericho doesn't want to be thrown around, which is absolutely fine. But, there's the no-sells in Chris Jericho, selling the fact that he's over, Keith Lee overpowers him in every way. Anyway, Daniel Garcia distracts the ref, which allows Swerve Strickland to come out of nowhere and attack Keith Lee with an international object so Jericho can get the pin. Adam Cole's music hits at the end. He comes out to manage Keith Lee. I know. I'm not the first to make this joke. We all thought of it, right? You just have to make the joke. And Chris Jericho looks on angrily. Adam Cole looks over his shoulder. Ooh, you can cut the tension with a knife. Yeah, I don't know. This was a very so-so main event of a very so-so edition of Dynamite. Like I said, there's stuff here. Look, the Elite showing up, Jeff Hardy returning. That's memorable stuff. That's big deal. That's headline grabbing shit. But the matches, everything was all right. Outside of Orange Cassidy and Buddy Matthews, everything was average to fine, really. A couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago, really not that far down the road, like January, February, I was sitting here week after week, screaming at the top of my lungs, what's going on? No, it's not, sorry. Screaming at the top of my lungs how spoiled we were week after week to be getting pro wrestling shows with quality matches from top to bottom. Just an incredible pro wrestling show. And now we're getting something which seems to be answering a lot of the criticisms from all of those from all these, fans out there saying, oh, we need more stories. So I feel like AEW is very much in a storyline vein right now. Trying to, get the casuals in at the expense of exciting TV matches from top to bottom. Now, is this a good strategy? Is it a bad strategy? Let's talk about this in a couple of weeks, the closer we get to Forbidden Door. But I'm going to tell you, I miss February 2023, where we were getting just these incredible matches. Bryan Danielson running MJF's gauntlet, January, just outstanding stuff, week in, week out. Now I'm like, it's been a couple of weeks like this where I enjoy the shows, but not for the same reasons. And this one here is a definite, There was some good stuff. There was some very average stuff, just fine. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this was a bad show. I'm going to tell you it was fine. And maybe this is the price to pay for AEW for being a standard bearer of excellence. When they do something that is not outright excellence, we kind of go, what's wrong with the product? When there's really nothing wrong that happened with the show, I'm still sitting here going, I'm not sure if this was it. Anyway, what is it is the conclusion of this AEW Dynamite review. Thank you everyone for listening, for watching. If you're on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes, or if you're on your favorite podcast application, I appreciate it a great deal. I, of course, will be back next Tuesday for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show proper. Otherwise, back on Thursday next week for another Dynamite review. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thank you again. I'll see you next time.